Hi guys, my name is Kurtis Vanderpool, for those of you that don't know me. I am now a student pastor here in Lubbock at St. Luke's United Methodist Church, and tech grad and a Wesley grad. I came to Wesley my freshman year in college. I've been a part of it ever since. I was on leadership when it became known as Bathos, and then I was an intern here for 2 years, my senior year, and then my first year out of college as well. So I have a lot of roots with the Wesley. Still do. I know a lot of you probably, and still have a good relationship with Ryan and Al and Penny and Scott and everyone else. Typical Wesley fashion, you can't ever really get fully away from it, so they've asked me to announce to you guys that your end of year party is Tuesday, May the 3rd at 6 p.m. It will be a swimming party with free food, of course, because what college party isn't a party without free food, and it will be located at 13402 County Road 1600. That's 13402 County Road 1600. It is south on Upland, which is on the west side of Lubbock. So don't miss your end of year party, Tuesday, May 3rd at 6 p.m. I've been informed that you guys have been discussing different forms of mercy and justice ministry, and I just kind of wanted to take a second. This isn't really part of what I'm supposed to talk about, but I wanted to take a second to encourage you guys and applaud you that mercy and justice, as Scott would say, often isn't sexy. It's easy to get excited about going into ministry when you think about being a youth pastor or going to seminary, or especially with our generation, we love the idea of being a missionary and traveling somewhere and helping those that we consider to be the least of these. But when it comes to mercy and justice in your own town, it gets ugly and stinky and dirty, and it's really hard. So I want to applaud you guys, and then I also want to encourage you. I know where you are right now. I've been there. Like I said, I've sat in Bathos for 3 years. 4 years if you count my years an intern, and when you're being constantly hit with all these different places that have need the Lord and that need Christian influence, it can really get overwhelming and daunting. You can really feel like there's just too much need out there and there's only so much that you can do. And so I just wanted to encourage you guys that no one's asking you to do all of it. I felt like that in college, that like I needed to do all of it. I needed to respond to everything, or I wasn't being a good Christian. And I just wanted to tell you that no one's asking you that. The Lord is not asking that of you. And so I want to encourage you guys to use this as an opportunity to discern directions the Lord might be leading you in this season. And then whatever direction that is that he gives you, then go for it. Just act out of obedience to that thing instead of trying to take it all on. So just wanted to start out with a little bit of encouragement. I think you guys are great, and the Lord's definitely going to work out his purpose in you through this. I've been asked to come and talk to you about a type of mercy and justice ministry that you may be familiar with, you may not be. But it's that of addiction. And the first thing I want to do is I want to ask you, what is the first thing you think of? Go ahead and close your eyes right now if it helps, but what is the first thing you think of when you hear the word addiction or addict? Now, I'll be honest, the things that pop up in my head are a stinky, dirty, homeless old man who is strung out on some type of meth or cocaine. He may be a little hostile, and he's probably asking me for money so that he can continue his addiction. Another thing that I see is a thin black woman who maybe hit some hard times in life, maybe has a few kids that were taken from her, and the only thing that gets her through her day is her fix. And so she comes to me with some made-up sob story asking for money. And to me, like, that's real annoying, and it takes time out of my day, and I don't want to deal with it. Or you may even think like of a syringe. I think of a syringe going into an arm, and that to me is scary, and it's gross. And so those are like the first things that I think of whenever I think of the word addiction. But I think my purpose in speaking to you today about this is to challenge that a little bit. First, I want to share some scriptures with you. I've just got two short ones real quick. The first one is out of Luke chapter 4, verses 18 through 20. This is when Jesus gets up in the synagogue and he unrolls a scroll and he repeats the words of Isaiah to the people, speaking it about himself. And this is what he says. "The Spirit of the Lord is on me, because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, to set the oppressed free, and to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." And then the other one is from Isaiah. It's chapter 58 in Isaiah, verses 6 through 7. And it says, he's talking about the people are fasting, trying to repent to the Lord. And the Lord says, "This is not the kind of fasting that I want. The kind of fast that I desire is for you to free those who are wrongly imprisoned, lighten the burden of those who work for you, let the oppressed go free, and remove the chains that bind people. Share your food with the hungry and give shelter to the homeless. Give clothes to those who need them, and do not hide from your own flesh and blood." The reason I bring this up is because both of those verses, I think they're iconic verses when we're talking about mercy and justice. But both of them speak about setting the oppressed free or setting the captives free. And for me, that's a tough image to grasp, living in America where we don't have what we would call slavery anymore, and most of us are pretty against it in America. And so the term captive and oppressed is kind of hard for me to grab a hold of. But I want to tell you, I've really been more involved with addiction recovery for the last year and a half. And I have never seen people more held captive by anything than I see in addiction recovery. Just to be blunt, addicts are slaves. They're slaves because there's nothing that they can do about it. When you are addicted to something, no matter what it is, whether it's a substance or a behavioral thing like food, eating disorders, or cutting, or whatever it is that you're addicted to, when you engage in that activity, most of the time you release dopamine into your brain. It's the chemical that makes you happy. And whatever it is that we do to get dopamine into our system, whenever we have real high amounts of dopamine and we go back to a normal level, we actually don't go back to a normal level. We actually drop below our normal level. So then we again need another fix of dopamine. And that's more typical with substance, but we also see that with other addictive behaviors too. So there's literally nothing that addicts can do. Once they get started in it, they cannot get themselves out of it. They have put themselves in a position where something or someone from the outside has to come and help them, or they will never be released from it. 60% of people that go to rehab for addiction eventually return to rehab. And so we see the majority of them either are not freed from it just by going to rehab, or they give up. I think that 40% is a lot of them. They rehab didn't work for them, so they gave up. And 1/2 of all untreated substance abusers eventually commit suicide. That's 45% actually of untreated substance abusers commit suicide. So when we're talking about the oppressed and captives, the first thing I see is people that are addicted. They have something outside of them that they rely on, they depend on, and they can't get away from it. And that to me is the definition of a captive. So the question is, what can we do about it? That's why we're here, to discuss mercy and justice ministry. How do we minister to addicts? And this is where it gets a little difficult because it is my belief that we can't. We cannot free addicts from their addiction. Only the Lord can. In fact, that's the first 3 steps of any 12-step program, or Celebrate Recovery, which is an 8-step program based off the 12 steps. The first 3 steps are, I am helpless to free myself from this. Only God can help me. Even secular 12-step programs say only my higher power can help me. And then step 3 is, I give myself fully to my higher power and trust him. So, as humans, we cannot free addicts from their addiction. So I think we have to go about it a different way than trying to do something to save them or to heal them of their addiction. And honestly, I believe the only thing that we can do is to join them. It's to come alongside them and show them that we are no different than they are, that we are addicts too. Just a few statistics. Just in America alone, there are 30 million identified substance abusers. That's about 10% of the population in America have identified as abusing substances such as alcohol or prescription drugs or illegal drugs. And those are what we typically assume are the addicts. But 11 million, there are 11 million reported cases of eating disorders in America. There are 10 million cases of self-harm. And if that's not enough for you, 77% of Americans admit to looking at pornography at least once a month. And that number doesn't really get better with Christians. Something like 95 to 97% of Christian men look at pornography every year. 60% of them look at it every single week. So the first thing that we have to do when we're talking about a ministry to addiction, to addicts and addiction recovery, is that we have to realize we are no different. When I see the image of the old man or the thin woman, and that's what I think of as an addict, I unconsciously start to see them as the other, as different from me, because I am not that way. I don't stink, I'm not homeless, I'm not constantly strung out on a substance. But the truth is, I'm addicted to bitterness, I'm addicted to unforgiveness. I have struggled with an addiction to pornography since I was 11. I am addicted to my own anger, mostly at Christianity. So the truth is, I can identify myself as the other, as different from them all I want, but the truth of the matter is I'm not. Especially not in the Lord's eyes. That's why in Isaiah 58 verse 7 he says, do not ignore your own flesh and blood. He's talking about the captives and the oppressed, and then he basically says they're the same as you. Romans 12:3 also tells us, this is Paul speaking, and he says, because of the privilege and authority God has given me, I give each of you this warning. Do not think better of yourselves than you really are. Be honest in your evaluation of yourselves, measuring yourselves by the faith God has given us. He's basically saying, like, don't think more highly of yourself than others, because you're not. And though you may not typically think more highly of yourself, you may not think you're all that great, we as humans have a natural tendency to think less of others that do things that we think are bad. I have a natural tendency to think drug addicts are somehow worse or farther from God than me. And that's what he's saying here. He's saying you can't do that. The other reason that, really the reason that I'm appealing to you to join in addiction recovery, and I'm coming alongside addicts as a fellow addict, is because I've never seen a better model of the church than I see in addiction recovery. Actually, as of filming this, today is April 21st, 2016. April 17th of 2015, I started going to a Celebrate Recovery program every week. I realized that the sin in my life is no different than the sin in their lives, and so if I am an addict, then I might as well start acting like one. And there is just no better picture of the church than in Celebrate Recovery, which Celebrate Recovery is the Christian alternative to secular 12-step programs. It's the same steps, it's the same mentality, but instead of saying higher power, we say Jesus. We say Jesus Christ is the only one that can free us. And I remember one time being your age, sitting where you are, after Bathos one night, we went out to a restaurant with some friends, and there was this table of about 20 to 30 people, and they were the most ragtag, mismatched, some of them like dirty, some of them very strange, some of them very normal, some of them very wealthy looking, just group of people all at this table of 20 to 30. And I was trying to figure out how they all had a connection, and then there was one girl with a crown on, and they all kind of seemed to be focusing on her, and one of my friends said, "Oh, it must be a birthday party." And then we looked a little longer and we realized it wasn't a birthday party. It was a sobriety party. This group of 20 or 30 totally random, mismatched people that had nothing to bind them on the outward appearance had become a family to celebrate a girl who had been sober for a month. And when I saw that, I immediately said, that's the church. That's what we should be doing. And as if that wasn't enough, y'all, the 12 steps or the 8 principles of Celebrate Recovery, I'm going to read them out for you. You tell me if this doesn't sound like gospel. From beginning to end of recovery process, it's supposed to follow these principles. I am helpless. I can do nothing to overcome my addiction. Only God can help me. He's the only one that can save me from this. Therefore, I give myself to Him. I trust Him fully to free me from this. I offer myself up to God to search my heart, search all that is within me, and I desire purity. When God reveals things within me, I am quick to obey God in whatever He asks of me. Part of that will be to make amends to people that I have wronged or hurt, and to ask for forgiveness from them, and to offer forgiveness to those that have hurt me. I will continue to seek the Lord daily. I will continue to inventory sin in my life where there may be some unforgiveness or some leftovers from addiction. And then lastly, I will help others the way that I have been helped. And y'all, that's the program, whether it's a Christian Celebrate Recovery or a totally secular Alcoholics Anonymous or any other 12-step program. That's the format. Is I can't do it, God can. I give myself to Him. I obey God. I make amends. I seek God daily, and I help others. So if nothing else, the reason that I'm passionate about addiction recovery and ministry to addicts is that I believe it's the truest sense of what Jesus came here to do and ask us as His body to do. It's the best way that I've seen captives set free. A couple of weeks ago, I saw a man in his 40s or 50s who has been a part of Celebrate Recovery for years confess that it was the first week he had ever been sober from gambling, that he had not gambled once in a whole week, and he was like a 5-year-old kid on his birthday party. He was so excited and so passionate and so full of joy from 1 week of not gambling that I looked at that and I said, that's a free captive. So, I just want to leave you with this. First of all, there's really nothing that we can do to help people. The first step is to realize that we're no different, and then come alongside them in our recovery. Join them in their recovery as we recover too. Ways that we can do that. First of all, guys, check out a Celebrate Recovery program. They're awesome. They're a little strange at first, but you really see glimpses of Jesus and true community everywhere. And there are several in Lubbock. There's one at Emmanuel Worship Center Saturdays at 6:30 p.m. You can go to Broadway Church of Christ Thursdays at 7. Or, guys, there's one right here at Texas Tech at the Center for the Study of Addiction and Recovery. It's Thursdays at 7. It is literally right across the street from the Wesley Foundation. So walk over, go there before you go to Underground on a Thursday, and see how honest people are in their sinfulness and in their need for God, their need for help. See how full of joy and excitement they are when they experience the slightest bit of freedom. And I dare you to not want to be a part of it. In fact, I've wanted to mold my youth ministry after it because I just see so much fruit from it. Okay, so I have a couple of questions for you to consider and maybe discuss among yourselves. But especially after the discussion's over, please go and pray on these. Please do what Lamentations chapter 3 verse 40 tells us. And it says, let us go and search all of our ways. Let us go and evaluate ourselves. Is there any sinfulness in us? And then let us return to the Lord with them. And so I want to encourage you to do that on your own too. But first question I want to ask is, what do you typically think of or associate with the word addict? What things come to mind? Just be honest. There's no harm in this. But what's the first thing that you typically think of whenever you hear the word addiction? And then second, taking the things that you think of, what are ways in which you consciously or unconsciously see yourself as different from those that you associate with addiction? Maybe you think you've made better choices and they're where they are because they haven't made good choices. Maybe you think, like I said, you naturally feel like you're closer to God than they are because you have your life together. Whatever it is, be honest about ways in which you see yourself as different from them. And then the last question I have is, what might you be addicted to? It may not be a substance, it may not be self-harm or eating disorders or anything that we see as real extreme, but the vast majority of people I've met in Celebrate Recovery were addicted to control, or were addicted to codependency or anger. And they never would have known that they were addicted if they hadn't gone to Celebrate Recovery. So what is it that maybe you are addicted to, and how can you move toward treating others, considering others as better than yourselves, just like Paul tells us? So thanks for your time. Thanks for letting me share with you guys. Many of y'all here know me, so there are plenty of ways to get a hold of me if you have any questions or want to pursue this further. But thank you, and good luck.